Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
A new textbook is currently being reviewed for use in public high schools across the nation, and it's quite one-sided regarding the 2016 presidential election and specifically very critical of President Trump. Pearson Education, a British-owned publishing house, is pitching this textbook to schools now. The text was authored by New York University professor James Fraser. Hi, I'm Lisa Donner, editor-in-chief of LibertyNation.com, and joining me for this week's Conservative Roundtable discussion are constitutional attorney and legal affairs editor Scott Cosenza, Sarah Cowgill, our gal from the Heartland and national correspondent, and Graham J. Noble, chief political correspondent. Welcome, one and all. So, by way of background for our roundtable members and viewers, here are a few choice quotes from By the People, A History of the United States. Quote, Clinton supporters also worried about the mental instability of the president-elect and the anger that he and his supporters brought to the nation, unquote. Here's another quote. Trump's supporters saw the vote as a victory for the people who, like themselves, had been forgotten in a fast-changing America, a mostly older, often rural or suburban and overwhelmingly white group. And finally, this quote. His cabinet nominees were mostly highly successful business leaders who had made their fortunes and were now joining the team of other unusually successful businessmen. They were largely white males, more so than any presidential cabinet since Ronald Reagan. So here we have a textbook that is being floated for use in American public schools. It seems to advance the liberal progressive agenda. Guys, are we now getting to the root of the problem here regarding indoctrination of young people? Let's begin with you, Graham.
Well, it's really, this is just about the most serious long-term problem this country faces. I mean, whatever else we talk about that is wrong with our society, education is at the root of everything. And if we're going to allow this kind of political indoctrination in our schools, it just doesn't bode well for the future at all. And personally, I'm against any kind of political indoctrination, whether it's from the right or the left. But the progressives have got their claws into the world of academia, and they are churning out people from these high schools and colleges who are just have a completely warped view of society and, quite frankly, of reality.
Sarah, the text seems to not so subtly push the idea over and over that Donald Trump is a racist. Why is this an important theme for the left to advance to kids in schools?
Well, kids today have grown up under a kinder, gentler, everybody included, no segregation. The only segregation is coming from the left. I mean, they have taken an American populace and Black Americans, Black Miss USA, Indians' rights, or Native Americans, pardon that, all the way down.
You are so politically incorrect. Everybody give Sarah a gong.
Yes, I have been politically incorrect. But, we've segregated ourselves since the 60s. I mean, we kind of had it all ironed out, and now we've gone back into coming up with these smaller groups, and those smaller groups are not welcome, and they're acting out, and they're learning this in the classroom. I mean, we've educated the teachers that teach in the high school and the junior high. We've allowed that to come in. It's not education anymore. It's indoctrination. It's, the power of suggestion. If you say racist enough, then the left will pick that up. That's what happened in the 2016 election. Racist, 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 racist. Pretty soon, that's all anybody says. At least pretty soon, the only thing that the other side said, non-conservatives. It's a complete talent that the left has managed to corner.
Look, textbooks are a real problem, and putting textbooks like this in the public schools are a real issue, but it's not just textbooks. One parent posted her daughter's vocabulary quiz on Facebook, and it read, quote, "It was difficult for me to fill in the blank, my feeling when I learned that Donald Trump had been voted as our 45th president." Or this one, "After reading about President Trump's immigration ban, I did not realize how blank the law can be." Scott, this seems a rather leading declarative sentence, does it not, Counselor?
Yes, it is. And it's no surprise that this is what we see from a captured institution, which is what the public schools have become in most of America for Democrats and their unions. They have a symbiotic relationship, which is that they get their money from the state and then they support the state in return. And, the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. So the answer here seems to be quite clear to me, Lisa, which is the separation of school and state. Let's get people in the business of educating their own children and organizing for that purpose privately. And let's get government out of it. That's where all this evil comes from.
Well, personally, I'm concerned that we not label all teachers as rabid leftists. I mean, they aren't. We had a fellow on our site the other day whose handle was NRA Lifer, and he rightly took exception to people just throwing out every teacher in the teaching profession, and I don't think that's fair. But
well, let me interrupt by saying, please, that the individual teachers don't make their decisions about textbooks. Those are made by systems, and the systems in place do favor that symbiotic relationship between the teachers' unions and the chiefly Democrat supporters, although sometimes Republicans, of that increase in government power and away from civil society. So the teacher outliers that are there are welcome, to be sure, but they don't make a dent in the system. To move the needle, we have to address the system-wide issues, I think.
Right. So my question was just that. Aren't teachers being hampered by the materials provided them, Graham?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases they probably are. I mean, I'm quite certain that within the world of academia in general, in the teaching profession at every level, there are a lot of, progressives. There are a lot of people who are pushing a left-wing agenda. But I'm absolutely certain that there are a great number of teachers out there who, they're teaching what they're told to teach, and probably many of them are afraid to speak out against it for fear of simply losing their jobs. And
well, you guys are one ahead of me every single question now. That was exactly what I was going to say, Graham, and you can answer that. Do you believe a Me Too culture is being put forth in public schools so that conservative teachers are afraid to speak their mind?
Yeah, well, the Me Too movement is it started as a supposedly noble cause, if you like, regarding women who have been the victims of sexual harassment or sexual assault in the workplace or in other environments, and it's really morphed into the same way the Black Lives Matter movement has, and the same way that so many of these other single issue crusades have turned into, and even going back as far as the hippie movement of the 60s, quite frankly, what they started out as, and to veer off slightly, Occupy Wall Street was the same thing. Basically, this movement, single issue platforms, single issue crusades that get people stirred up and emotional and get them out marching. And then what happens is very quickly they get swallowed by the progressive movement. And the progressive movement is like it's like the Borg in Star Trek. They go around and they assimilate all of these other issues into one huge, great big thing that comes under the umbrella of social justice. And so I think you talk about the Me Too movements within schools. I think ultimately the real problem the teachers have is not the Me Too movement. It is that whole social justice crusade in general, which is forcing them to conform or to essentially change their careers. It's a shame.
All right, Sarah, you are one of us that has really worked in local politics. You understand how these things work. And Scott made the good point that it's really committees that sort of make these decisions. What can be done to keep this kind of, well, frankly, biased garbage out of the American public schools?
I'm not sure, because, I mean, with a textbook like that they're trying to get pushed through, then it's everywhere and it'll become standardized testing on that textbook. I don't know how to combat it. I know that the conservatives in the rural areas combat it by not participating with those textbooks in the school systems. In the really small communities, they teach what they want to teach. And in the larger communities, people pull their kids out. Conservatives are big in homeschooling around here. Despite possibly coming up with that alternative that can be funded, by the Koch brothers, just a thought. I don't know how to combat that. You have a teacher who could have put anything on her spelling list, and instead she chose to go that route. That could have been, spelling tests aren't standardized. So she could have chosen to put, I feel Joe Blow is a racist because his blah, blah, blah. But she equated it specifically at the president, at this administration. And first of all, she needs to be fired for that. And second of all, we need to, as Scott put it, we need to separate the state and the school systems. It's out of control. Conservatives are just going to get lapped. And the only thing they can do is be good parents, teach their kids, and their kids better have a good head on their shoulders when they go into the university system.
All right, Scott, I'm going to give you the last word, as usual.
Well, I would just encourage people to think of this not as a problem with how to rein in the unwieldy government school system, but a clear sense of why it's important to break from that system. And I think, Lisa, if I were to answer your question initially, we could march down to the school board and yell and scream during the open meetings, and I've done that. And following that, we can demand voucher systems so that parents of children who the taxpayers are footing the bill for can choose better solutions. And then finally, and hopefully, a system whereby we have real freedom, whereby people are in charge of educating their own offspring, and the government is not involved in any way, and that's the best solution because that's the freest one.
Well, actually, you brought up an idea. I am going to give myself the last word, and that is the other day I did a story on a Montana high school senior. He put together a pro-gun rally. And he showed me and talked about the fact that 3 of his high school teachers called him gross, disgusting, and somewhat offensive, something like that. So anyway, I called him later and I said, wow, your story's going through the roof. A lot of people are hitting it. What's happening with these teachers? Are they, giving you a hard time? And he said, as a matter of fact, they are on the ropes, and there is a good chance that they could be in some trouble. So maybe the answer is just to call these people out. Now, you can't call the textbooks out. Yeah, you can't call the textbooks out, but you can call these people out. Anyway, we could go on and on. Thank you all so much for another wonderful roundtable discussion on LibertyNation.com. Make sure you listen to our narrated articles and drop by our website, Facebook, and Twitter, LibertyNation.com. I'm Lisa K. Donner, and this has been another edition of LNTV.
Liberty Nation. News and commentary, minus the propaganda. LibertyNation.com.